Hi guys, welcome to today's tutorial. Today we'll be looking at Juju and a Pentaho Data Integration charm that I have been building with help from the lovely charmers on the Juju IRC channel on Freenode. Um, for those of you who don't know what Juju is, it is a application modeling platform for cloud-based and cluster-based services. It's also great for developing and application development because it allows you to build and model platforms in a very flexible manner and deploy and tear all this stuff down. Um, and so we've been using it internally with a number of clients, and we've been transitioning people across the various services that we provide. We've been moving them over to Juju, and the latest one to get the treatment is PDI. So PDI is great for ETL. We use it all the time, but when it comes to cloud-based deployment, there's always configuration files to edit. If you want to get something that clusters up, then you have to be able to configure it has a dynamic cluster, but you have to be able to configure some of the configuration settings, and that's less than ideal for a dynamic service. Similarly, if you just want to deploy a slave, you have to obviously spin up the node, download the software, make sure Java's installed. And so we're looking for something automatic that will administer itself. We can just monitor and make sure that it works, but allows us the scalability and flexibility that we sort of require for our business purposes. So the other day when I did my talk, I explained there was a Juju GUI, but it wasn't ready yet for 2.0 because what we're running here is a trunk build. But the good guys over at Canonical have deployed a beta Juju GUI for us to play around with, and so this is what you see here. And so Juju GUI obviously allows a web-based interaction with what is otherwise a command line service. So I create a controller. This today we're doing this in EC2, so this is all based in Amazon services. And so we bootstrap a controller, which is a server that runs up there that controls everything and makes sure everything works correctly. And then in this case, we also install Juju GUI. Now, if you don't use the GUI or have no interest in GUI, then it's not a requirement. This is just a nice way to be able to demonstrate how your platform is running to users or just manipulate yourself without having to get a terminal out and start messing around in there. So we'll do a quick tour of the Juju GUI. We will do a bit of command line stuff and we'll sort of mix it up and see how we get along. Hopefully we'll have a PDI cluster at the end of it all. So as you can see here, this circle here is the charm that I have deployed. This is the Juju GUI charm. It is a charm just like every other charm that you deploy on your platform. And so as you can see, I can drag it around and it will tell me stuff up here on the left hand side about what's available. So I have one unit of Juju GUI. I don't need to cluster it up, so that makes sense. If I want to configure it, I can look in the configuration options and set a whole manner of different things, changing the ports, read-only, permissions, debugging type stuff, where I'm getting my charms from. A lot of useful configuration options. The expose one is quite important. By default, Juju won't open any firewall ports for security purposes, quite obviously. And so, if you want to make a service available to your outside world, outside of the network, then you have to expose it. So in EC2, you have public and private IP addresses, and so services up in the cloud can communicate with one another using the private IP addresses, so you don't need to expose them. But obviously, if you want remote access to Juju GUI, for example, then you need to set it to expose, at which point Juju will open firewall. And obviously, that applies to an awful lot of different services. It's not just EC2. Down here you can see the version. This is a beta build, so it doesn't come from the charms direct from the main charm store. This comes from a different account, but to change version would allow me, if I have a deployed server, to then say, okay, well I want to swap back to running the mainline branch, and I can change the different version. Shouldn't have clicked that button. I'll go back. So also with Juju GUI, obviously you can see the units that you have available. any containers and bits and pieces that are running in them. So here I can see that I've got this unit here. This little icon obviously is the Juju GUI icon. It tells me that that's running within the unit itself, and up there I can see where it is. I can also destroy it and do various other bits and pieces. But we're more interested in the container. What I'll do is, whilst that's up and running, is I'll just flick over here. And so this is the Juju status that we looked at the other day. And so the the PDI charm that I've written isn't yet in the charm store. I haven't uploaded it to the charm store. It's not quite ready for that, but it will be at some point later today, I hope, so people can start testing it. So because it's not a charm store, I need to deploy it. So I'm going to use a local deployment to get it bootstrapped and up and running. So this I have to do from the command line. So if I do trusty, it's not in my history, so I'll do Juju deploy status local trusty Pentaho Data Integration PDI. So nope, that's wrong. It's not deploy status, deploy service. In fact, it's not either of those. What am I doing? So, yeah, so to get it deployed, Juju deploy, and then local trusty Pentaho integration, and PDI is just a nice alias, so I don't have to call it a big long name every time. We'll leave that running. What's happening now is it's going off to Amazon EC2. It's saying, I need a new node. Can you fire me up a default node, please? And on that, I'm going to put my Pentaho data integration charm and spin it all up and configure it for me. And so in a minute, we'll be able to start seeing things appearing, like in the units, when units start appearing, and we'll know things are happening. But in the meantime, we will go back to here. This is also powered by WebSockets, so you'll see the service just magically appear on here shortly. But one thing we do need to run our PDI charm is Java, because PDI is a Java-based application. So one thing we could do is just tell it that a mandatory requirement for my charm is OpenJDK. That would be the simple thing to do. I spin up PDI, and with it I need to put OpenJDK on the server. But I, as a developer, oh, there you go, you can see my charm appear. I haven't changed the icon, so the icon's still wrong, but you can see that my charm is spinning up. So going back to the Java stuff, as a developer, I know some people just, I use OpenJDK, I'm quite happy with it, but some people point blank refuse to use anything other than Oracle JDK, or if you deploy this on a power system, you want an IBM version of the JDK. And so instead of force feeding users a JDK version, what we've done is using the new interfaces in Juju 2 is allow people to plug and play their Java implementation. So currently in the Charm store is OpenJDK. I think there's a couple of others, but OpenJDK is the one we use more regularly. There will be an Oracle one on its way at some point. Down in the community, because it's not become yet a recommended charm, you'll see top of the community list is OpenJDK, and if I select that, it will give me a bunch of information, specifically, obviously, what version of Ubuntu it will run on, what its name is, what its path is, so I can deploy it on the command line. If I wanted to do it on the command line, I could just copy that link. And then down here is a README and a bunch of information about the charm itself. So there's an awful lot of information which you can find for each charm that is in the charm store, just by clicking on the charm when you're searching for it. Obviously I want to add this to the canvas, so down here is my charm. So my canvas is starting to fill up, not massively, but it's more than nothing. And so OpenJDK is now sat there on the canvas with the little guy waving at you. And the cool thing about this OpenJDK charm is it's a subordinate. So it doesn't actually spin up a server, because it would be pointless having Java just running on a server by itself, because it needs something to run, it needs an application to run. So what's happened with the charm configuration is PDI will start up and install PDI, but it won't actually run it because there's no Java on the system. OpenJDK, on the flip side, won't start a node but will provide Java. And so what we can do with this icon here at the top is join these together. You'll notice that the others have all disappeared, but OpenJDK is still there waving at us. So if I scroll that over there, I can then create this blue line, and the blue line is a relation. It says these two charms have a relationship with one another. And so what will happen when I hit the commit changes button is it will tell Juju that this relation is indeed true, and that when PDI is ready, can you please install OpenJDK on the platform as well, so that they can interact with each other. So if I hit you'll see down here. So if I just by the by, if I make changes to Juju GUI, it stacks them up and waits for you to commit. So it's not, it doesn't force you to do something until you're absolutely sure what you're doing is correct. So if I hit commit changes, it will tell me what changes I've made, and then hit deploy. It will go off to the Juju server and make those changes. And so the node is still spinning up. You can see it's still pending. It's not actually ready for service yet. That's mainly because obviously it needs Java installed on it and just generally takes a bit of time. And so I can also see in the relations that there is an OpenJDK relation, and that works on the Java interface. So if I go back to Juju status so we can see what's happening. Up here you can see that it's still installing PDI. Of course, PDI is like an 800 meg download. But this is all happening in the background. Once it's downloaded, it will also do a checksum check to make sure that the download is correct. If not, then it will give you a warning. And then once it's done that, it will then install PDI and make sure that everyone is happy. So whilst that takes some time to work, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back in a few minutes' time when it's ready, and we'll look at some more stuff to do with this PDI charm. Hello, welcome back. So a few minutes has passed. It didn't take that long, but Juju status, as you can now see, tells me that I've got OpenJDK installed. It also tells me that cart is ready, and it also tells me what the master is. Now there's only one node here, but as we start to expand, you'll see why that is important. Also in the status, you can see the public IP address. You can see what ports that the charm exposes to an end user, and also the state of the various workloads and any other messages that it wants to respond with. So one thing we need to do now is obviously make Juju expose the port. So if I go back to my GUI, as we're playing in the GUI today, I could do this on the command line with Juju expose, but we might as well do this properly. So up here, if I want to expose my service, I click yes, it will tell me where it becomes available. So if I commit that and deploy it, and so that will then make my service available, my cart service available to outside users. Now, if I click on that to open a new tab, you can see I now have a cart server running exactly where this PDI URL told me it would be. So I know that it's on port 9999, and then if I go to show status, of course, nothing has yet run. But it gives me the usual cart information, and also if I do get slaves, it will tell me that I have no slaves available, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I have a running cart server. From that, I can then, I want to be able to run stuff. So if I flip over to PDI and open up my transformation, you can see that it downloads a file from the internet. So if we just open this up for proof, you can see it's one of the sample files that PDI uses for testing. So I want to be able to run this. So if I look in my slave servers, I can have a look and say, okay, well my slave server IP address is that one, And so I can set my slave server up and say this is the port that it runs on, these are the credentials, and it's the master. I should then be able to go execute remotely. Hold on, let me delete that one. Execute remotely, and then pass the export to a remote slave server. Hit the launch button, and with a bit of luck, it will start executing the transformation. So there you go. Up in the cloud, you can see that it's run my little simple transformation and output a text file. I should then be able to go back to the kettle slave server and actually ask it what it's done. So you can see that the status page tells me that it's run this transformation and that it's sat there and waiting. So I'm not entirely sure why PDI sits there waiting when it's clearly finished, but that's sort of the status it seems to sit itself in. But from an actual execution point of view, we know it's run. And actually, the cart UI, whilst basic, is quite useful. It tells you exactly what transformation it's run, where it's run it, gives you the log files. You can also tell it that you want to run it again. And so, from a cluster perspective and from a remote slave perspective, the log files is quite a useful thing to have a look at. And so I can then go back to my status page, and this will, as I keep running my jobs, will obviously fill up, and you can just remove it from the list. So that's basic cart server configuration. I haven't gone into the node itself and changed any configuration files. I've just told it to start up cart. I've also added a bunch of configuration parameters to the PDI. So, not everyone wants to use cart. I fully understand that. So there's a bunch of actions that allow you to just run and schedule transformations locally on the machine. You might also want to run it on a different port. You can do that. You can obviously change the password, because running the default password is possibly not the best thing you've ever done in your life. When you save these changes, it will go off to the server and reconfigure cart, restart cart, and of course you can just disable it. So if you click on the disable button, it will shut down cart, and that will just allow you to run a standard PDI server up in the cloud, but without the cart interface, which again is perfectly sensible thing to do if that's the way you want to do your deployment. The idea with this is it obviously offers the flexibility, and cart certainly from a interaction perspective, from a scaling perspective, offers an ease of use, a practical ease of use over just running standard ETL jobs on a single server in the cloud. It allows me to run this stuff in parallel and what have you. So, talking about parallelism and also just scaling up, one of the things that we want to be able to do is say, okay, well, maybe my daily transaction levels just mean I need one large node in EC2, but then at month end or year end, when we're doing a lot more processing, we need more horsepower to run our ETL. Or we run different ETL that requires more parallelism and all that type of stuff. So what we want to do is make scaling up really easy. And so what we want to do is be able to scale the service. So if I wanted two more servers to run my ETL along with the one that I've already got in place, I can tell it that I want two more. I can commit those changes. You can see its machine has been added, PDI unit has been added. And so if I hit the commit button, if we then look at the machines, you can see how it's scaling up. And so the scale up is absolutely fantastic. And one of the great things about Juju is the fact that it allows you to do it so easily. If I do it on the command line, you can see these nodes are now spinning up down here. If I do it on the command line, I can do Juju add unit minus n, and then the amount of new units that I require, and then the service. So it could be PDI, it could be something else that I want. MySQL. I want a load of new MySQL servers. I can just tell it I want more units, and it will go away and create more identical units. And so, you can see this stuff is allocating, and again, it will go through the same process. It will download PDI, it will configure PDI and install Java on the machine. It will then do a bunch of stuff to do with leadership election, and then from that we'll hopefully have a working PDI cluster. And so once again, we will pause it there and come back in 5 minutes when that's decided it's ready. Right then, welcome back to the last part. So as you can see, we've now got three PDI units up and running. And then in the GUI as well, you can see the fact that these machines are up, running, and available to me. You can click on the units, you can find out information about them, various IP addresses, bits and pieces. So one of the things we wanted to be able to do was obviously be able to deploy auto configuring PDI clusters. And so when you set up PDI for a cluster, you need to be able to give it, you need to give all the slaves the master information about the master so that they know where to register, so they can see what's going on. And so, that was one of the things that we really needed to be able to sort out. And also, one of the things was which one was going to be the master. Well, Juju has leadership. And so, one of the units which you spin up will become the leader. And so, this is why in the message it's important that we tell our users which one the master is, because, from a PDI cluster point of view, you need to be able to connect to the right one. So in this case, the master's this 52.58.52.6 IP address. That's the public IP address, and you can see that they're all up and running. Now, if PDI 25 went down, another master would become the leader, and so that IP address would change. But it's still fed back to the user, their understanding of which one's going on, and also in the background, all the cart configuration files are changed and restarted so that the cluster stays consistent and stays available. And so from that, we can then go back to PDI. Of course, the great thing about this is in Juju 2.0, the idea being that we will be able to mimic this entirely on our laptops using LXD or what have you before deploying into the cloud. And of course, at that point, you've not actually incurred any costs. We've just spun up a fake three-node Hadoop PDI cluster on our laptop and then just tested stuff. So you can test this networking without actually deploying in the cloud, but also test it in exactly the same way that you would do it when it is deployed. So because only 9999 is open, what we've done is written a job that will deploy our transformation to the master node, and then from there it will then go and run it across all the slaves. So in the transformation itself, if I go into the advanced settings, you can see that I've run this transformation in clustered mode. If I then hit the play button, execute remotely, and then select my remote host, and again I will pass that stuff off, hit the launch button, and away it goes. And so from that, I can then go back to my PDI cluster and say, okay, well, here we go. Here we've got some running jobs. You can see the cluster job is running. Oh, that one's run with errors, but you can see that this one is up and running. It's finished supposedly, and everything's happy. And so from that, you can see that the ETL is working, and obviously you get good feedback of what's happening. Also, from a subscription point of view, if I go to Kettle get slaves, I can also see what slaves are available to me. Obviously, they all have their own user interfaces that I can go and inspect. And from that, you get this picture about what's being executed in your cloud. And of course, finally, the great thing about Juju, and when I've finished using cloud-based services, is that I want to go back down, or I want to just go, get rid of everything altogether. Well, I can do that as well. So if I go back to my units, I can select which units I want to remove. If I go back to PDI as a service, I can select destroy, I can hit confirm, I can commit those changes back to the platform. It will tear everything down, and then from that my PDI cluster has disappeared and I go back to incurring no costs. So this charm will end up in the charm store very soon. I will put links in the description as soon as there's stuff available for people to test. I hope it provides some inspiration as to where how Juju can enhance the deployment of ETL type services. And it's a reactive layered charm, so you can start building on top of this and deploying your own stuff using those services as well. So hopefully it gives people inspiration. If you need information, feel free to drop us an email, info@meteorite.bi, or swing by the Juju IRC channel, and you'll find me in there as Magical Trout. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.